Welcome to the Second Bite podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the Second Bite podcast. I have a great guest with me today, Kevin Biondi from Sproutward. Kevin, so happy that you could join us. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Todd. Great to meet with you here.
Geez, I mean, Kevin, I know you've been very busy. We were super fortunate, you and I, to get a great transaction done with you right at the end of the year to the good people at Power Digital and Grayson LaFrance, who's been on the podcast before. So now we get to hear a story from the other side, and I'm just glad that we could spend some time doing that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Looking forward to it. Lesson number one, don't do it. Try and close a deal right during Christmas time. Your family will not appreciate it.
No, we closed that on this Christmas Eve. Excuse me, New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah, last business day of the year. It was a good transaction. I want to unpack that. I want to first give a quick shout out to the people at Markham, who are the sponsors of our podcast. You know Markham through Don Cantonez, who helped us a ton with your financials, your due diligence, your working capital calculations, all the rest. Sure. Those guys are terrific. Used to be E. Cohen, now it's Markham. You can find them online, and shout out to them for being a great sponsor. So Kevin, why don't we start with this? So Sproutward back in December became a part of Power Digital. Tell me, if you will, what Sproutward is, who you serve, and what you do for them.
Certainly, yeah. So Sproutward was a digital consultancy, for lack of a better word. So we never like to use the term agency, but really we really help our clients align around growth. And we had kind of two core pieces of our business. The first was helping clients accelerate their growth through digital means. And the second was really analytics and measurement. And I think one of the things that we quickly learned when we started our business on the advisory side was we needed the data and analytics to really help figure out how to scale our business. And that led us to building out the core analytics practice, along with some of our software solutions of how we can really kind of be a tech-enabled firm to help clients grow their business.
And so and a lot of people talk about it, you really are a data-driven marketing firm, and you really create first-party data, or you use the first-party data, and you help your clients interpret that to buy their media more effectively.
Yeah, 100%. So we're basically leveraging that data, but just also to better understand what's happening with their customer. Like, how is their customer file growing? How is their customer base? What's the lifetime value that's generated for every dollar that you spend? And then, what does that retention look like? Are the customers you're acquiring, are they staying and purchasing? So really, when we're advising clients, it's all about what does it cost to acquire a customer? What's the lifetime value that you generate from that customer? How do I go find more of them? And how do I make sure that I'm keeping them? So the better that you understand those things, the better you can build your marketing strategy around. So we always start with those data inputs to help a client develop a strategy, because then you can figure out, okay, is Google driving better clients than better customers than Facebook? And there are different product categories. If someone who buys a shirt versus someone who buys pants, what's the lifetime value? And being able to understand those insights can then dictate how do you feed your media strategy. And those are a lot of things that we felt was critically important. Again, as we're advising clients on what you should do from your strategy standpoint, we really needed the data to kind of help us guide where we're going and prove out what we're doing is successful.
And then just to put it in rough context, can you give me an approximate size of the business in terms of people or revenues or whatever you're most comfortable with? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I can't disclose our revenues, but I can talk through in terms of, we were roughly about 40 people.
Okay. And as I remember, so when we got together, you and your two partners you knew that the data, I always remember you telling me this, that the data hub that you had created was a powerful tool that gave you a very competitive edge and gave your customers a competitive edge. But you knew that the rest of the world was spending money and investing and developing and that soon they would catch up. So you're going to continue to pour a lot of money into this data hub on top of growing the business, solving client problems, developing new clients, and everything that goes into to running a consultancy. Was that the primary driver for wanting to do a transaction?
Yeah, it was really figuring out, honestly, what's the best path to growth. We knew we had something good. We had great people, we had a great product, and we needed to figure out how do we scale both, right? And I think, in looking at going down different ways, is we could continue to go at it ourselves and continue to try and grow, and which could be fun, but also has a lot of different challenges. And then the flip side is we could find a strategic partner, someone who, has a shared vision that we have and a shared culture that can really help us grow. And, I think of, even from school, my business school, the professor always said, do you want to be king or do you want to be rich? And it's, at the end of the day, it's finding people. And I think what's made us successful at Sproutward and is making us successful with Power is finding good people, just surrounding ourselves with as many good people as possible and continuing to do big things. And that team environment has been something that's been successful with us at Sproutward, and the partners that we found within Power, are just helping us accelerate. And I think that for us is really allowing us to grow so that, I don't have to worry about billing anymore. I have a team that knows how to do billing, and then you really focus on what each and every one of us are good at, right? And that's what I think in looking at a partner was key for us.
And I remember when we first really started exploring this together, one of the things that we talked about was that, and that's nice, but also for a small company, you sell to large enterprise, right? Yeah. Because those are the people that have the proprietary data that feeds your data platform. And it's not easy to get into those because people like Power already own them or are already standing in the way. So not only could they help support the future development of your technology, they also had access to customers, access to an infrastructure, access to HR, access to finance. How much did that weigh in on the decision?
Oh, a ton. Because again, one of the things that we found was, when we got meetings, we usually close sales, but it's, continuing to gain them. And, myself and my founders, we're all wearing multiple different hats, right? So we were, operating the business, trying to grow the business, trying to grow the team, and going through. And I think having, a partner that has a lot of those things figured out has made it a lot easier for us, right? And allows us to, again, go back to focusing what we're really good at. And I think that's one of the things culturally is important when you're looking for a partner, is really finding a partner is going to help you do that and help you really scale and do what's right for the businesses. And that's what's tough when you're small. You can't afford a full-fledged finance department, a full-fledged HR department, a full-fledged sales department, a full-fledged IT department, right? You just don't have that ability. So I think as we were growing and hitting that next level, if we wanted to be 100 employees, we're going to have to build those out. Those take investment, that takes overhead, and it's, we wanted to move fast. So we're better off finding a great partner, and that's the path that we chose.
And I think a lot of times when we get started, so I want to go back to when we started.
Sure.
So a lot of times when we get started with somebody, we talk to them about the idea of you can take some chips off the table. You can get chips that hopefully are going to be more valuable, and then you'll plug into this network and everything else. When we first got started, which from this recording is probably about a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Well, do you remember your biggest concerns as we kind of launched the process?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I think one of the biggest concerns was I didn't know idea what to expect, right? I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think I say this is like my third business degree of just going through the process. And really, I think as I looked at it, is we were woefully not ready, right? We needed to, there's things that just better organization. Again, being a small enterprise that doesn't have its own finance department, that doesn't have its own HR department, a lot of those core processes and things that you need to have ready, we weren't there yet, right? And I think it was trying to kind of figure out what we don't know. We knew we wanted a partner. We knew we wanted to be kind of opportunistic about how we approach things, but that was one of the things that we just kind of struggled with, trying to better understand. And frankly, to be honest, we didn't even know if we were going to sell. We just wanted to kind of look at all different options and see what made the most sense for the business. I mean, we went down to the decision of, do we want to take investment money? Do we want to go at it on our own, continue to bootstrap, or do we want to find a strategic partner? And I think Along that way, we entertained all those options. And honestly, until we really kind of met several times, I think I even told Grayson the first time we met that, we're just not ready right now. We need to focus on our business. We're not going to do it. But really just finding that right match made sense. And that's where we went down that path.
Yeah. And a little bit, I feel like when you talk about, we didn't have a fully developed finance team or an HR team. If I would have come in as a consultant and said, hey, you guys really need a finance team, you probably would have said, yeah, that doesn't make sense for us, right? Because it doesn't, right? Because of the size organization that you are. So I'm not sure if there's a whole lot or anything somebody could really do to get ready to go into this process other than be larger and already have those needs.
Yep. It's kind of like having a kid. You don't know what you're ready for, and you can't really prepare until it happens, right?
Yeah. Now that you've had that kid, right, and you've given birth to a very successful transaction, would you have waited until you had those departments built out, or would that have been redundant eventually?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and I think this is where there is a niche in the market for, like, again, if we built all those things out, a buyer would look at our overhead and be like, you've got way too much overhead. So you would want to do it in a wise way. But I think it's really trying to align on that vision ahead of time so that you're building your financials. I mean, just even the way we build our financials out and making sure we're in a good place. Markham, your sponsor, was actually great at kind of helping us along the way and get those in the place that they needed to be. But I think there's probably things of just how you organize things, how we, kept track of data and how we kept track of historicals, and almost like preparing yourself for due diligence before you go through it would have been valuable. And there's probably more things we could have organized ourselves around.
Now, so let's go into, now that we're in process, right? And we're talking to people and all. So of your revenue, was it roughly like 10 or 15% was pure data hub revenue?
Yeah.
But the data hub was responsible for 100% of the revenue, right? The way you work is, we need this data to give you good advice. So we have to use that to get you the good advice. And so we spent money, scratch that, you guys spent money investing in building out this data capability. But at the end of the day, one thing we always tell clients is, you are what your revenue says you are. So you're not a software or SaaS business, because that's only 10, 15% of your revenue. So you're going to be judged as a services business. And so our approach was to say, okay, that's fine. If you're going to judge us as a service business, then the money we spent on the technology should be added back to our services EBITDA, right? And before we met Grayson and the good people at Power Digital, you were under LOI with another group with that general thinking and understanding, right?
Yep. What
do you remember from that process?
Well, I think it was again, learning about the process and learning about the diligence. I think one of the things is, when you're so excited to, go through the process and you're focused on making sure everybody likes you, you also got to make sure they fully understand you. And I think that's one of the key things of, as we lay things out, there's a lot that a buyer's digesting, and really making sure. I think the first suitor that we talked to had an understanding, but not a full understanding until they fully got through due diligence about how that makeup of the business worked and what our growth trajectory was. And I think that played into a little bit of the challenges of the deal going to where it needed to go. And I think, what I would do more before that LOI stage is really make sure they know both the good and the bad, because again, you're finding a suitor that's going to be your partner. So like, look, everybody's got things, skeletons under the closet, and you want to make sure like it's all out there, because at the end of the day, you want them to really understand the business. And it's not that it's to say one thing's good or one thing's bad. It's more, they've got to understand what they're doing. And I think from the beginning, everybody always said, hey, we're going to have a very hard time understanding your business, because we're just not a straight service business and we're not a straight technology business. So when you put the two of them together, I think even when we had conversations from investors to particular potential suitors, everyone always said the number one problem that people are going to have is truly valuing what you're worth.
Yeah, and and that is true. Part of the complication, I think, is the first buyer that we had was backed by a very good private equity firm. A lot of private equity firms focus on numbers in cells. And we were talking with the operator of the marketing business who was very excited about and understood, I think, to a large degree what you did, and maybe overestimated his ability to convince his private equity investor. Because when we really got down to crunch time, what we had in the LOI and the offer that we had in the LOI, the private equity firm didn't feel comfortable getting to that number and wanted to recast the deal after we went through due diligence and after they got their quality of earnings and the rest. Is that kind of how you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I think, that's the ultimate exit. I think there's always multiple factors as they go through, right? And I think that's where it's, getting as much upfront in the LOI so that everybody's clear, right? So what's the stream of revenue, where it's coming from, what are the key, I think as you want to have upfront, during this diligence period, what are the key milestones that you need to hit, and really what are the things that you're going to judge it on? Because I think that's critically important. And I think they were a great firm. We could have been great partners, but I think it's again making sure everybody fully understands. And I think that's the piece that's really a challenge, because if you're trying to hit a revenue number and an EBITDA number, and it's great, but if you're looking at, if you're valuing it based off of different types of metrics, that's important. It's important to understand, things like your mix of recurring revenue, your mix of your project revenue, your mix of reoccurring revenue, right? And I think those are all important things to really flesh out early on in the conversation to make sure people feel comfortable. And again, you never know what the ultimate reason is, but I think that those are some headwinds that we ran into.
And can you take me back as much? So, we had worked pretty hard, you and I and Annabella and Scott, to accomplish all those things you said. And we obviously felt like we were doing that well. And then all of a sudden the deal's off, right? We signed an LOI. We're within a couple of weeks of getting to close. Do you remember what that felt like?
Yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not fun. I mean, again, we learned a ton. We learned a lot. And I think we learned a lot about ourselves and what we wanted to do. And I think, for us, it was more of a rallying cry, all right, let's get back to focusing on what we're going to do. Let's rally everyone around it and let's move forward. But, it was just one of those things of, I think with any of the opportunities, as you're going, you can't turn back, right? So you just look at, hey, what do we learn from this, and let's move forward. And that was really what we tried to do.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing was, from a timing standpoint, right in and or around there, we did a podcast episode with Grayson.
Yeah.
And if for anyone listening, go back or Google Grayson LaFren's Second Bite podcast. It's a great episode. It's actually a 2-part episode to listen to. So after the episode, Grayson and I were talking about what is it that you're looking for. And he said, we need more data capability. We need this, we need this, we need this. And so I told him about Sproutward. He's like, God, that sounds perfect. I got to talk to him. And I remember I called you and you said, no, thank you, right? You were burnt out. And Grayson said, just get me on the phone with him. Do you remember what it was like in that conversation with him? But because there obviously must have been some differences that you felt from the conversation with him to the road we had just been down.
Yeah, well, I think it is just I think it was more just them really trying to understand us and really listen to hey, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do? And I said at the beginning, we're just not really, we're going to move forward. We've got a lot of opportunity. We're just not interested in selling right now. And I think, he was, Grayson's pretty charismatic and an amazing leader. So I think it was, he's like, well, let's just have a conversation, and I think that was one of the things of him just really trying to understand us. And I think that was a key thing that we really liked about, what he tried to do and how he did. And I think even with the very first few conversations, our intent was still more, hey, this seems like a great person to know. In a few years, we'll hit them up again and say, look, we're in a place. But I think as we had more and more of those conversations, it kind of opened up. It got more exciting. We could just see culturally, like there was more of a fit, and they were more in the technology space too. So they could see a lot of the bumps that we've already gone through. And I think they could articulate that in a good way that made us feel like, hey, this is a partner that we just are more culturally fit.
And then I will say this, because your objective from the very beginning was really very focused on the second bite. It was because you wanted a significant, if not a majority, of your consideration in equity in the larger company. And so for you, it was really about a bigger, faster future than it was actually chips off the table at close. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. This was for us, again, we were going down that path of, do we bootstrap it ourselves? Do we take investment money, or do we find a strategic partner? So we really, at the end of the day, we wanted to say, hey, what's going to set us up for growth? What's going to set us up best for growth? And as long as we can find a way to do that, and I think that's what was beneficial for us was we were still are strong believers in the team, strong believers in the product that we had, and we didn't have to do anything, right? We didn't have to take investment money. We could have kept going at it the way we were. We didn't have to find a strategic partner. It was really more about, what do we think is going to be best and what's going to scale us? And I think that's why, like, we wanted to find a partner that wanted us, right? That wasn't just like, hey, that's great, now you're out of here. We wanted a partner that we're going to grow with, and we have really high hopes of continuing to build out. And that was one of the things we were happy to see that with Power and their previous acquisitions, that a lot of the people were still there, and it has really a strong organization and has been able to build that. Whereas, we don't want to be a part of a firm that's just buying up, companies and then spitting them out, right? It's really about, how do you find a partner? And I would say our previous buyer, we liked our previous potential suitor as well, but I think it was really making sure it was someone that we wanted to be a part of, because we wanted to be in it for the long haul and not just for this initial phase.
What surprised, so now getting into the transaction, what surprised you most about the due diligence part of the process and the way that worked?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the volume, right? They really, and I think this comes through as like, you're never really ready for everything that you have to have. And it's like, going from every last contract to everything that you've gone through in the business, and it's making sure that you've got it all together. And in the way that they look at it, right? We looked at and operated our business in a certain way. They're going to have a certain way that they're going to value it. They're going to have a certain way it's going to fit into their models. They're going to have a certain way that they, everything from people's compensation to the way contracts are structured to the way insurance is set up. I mean, pretty much everything, right? So there's just a sheer volume that when you're a small organization, you're just not ready for.
Yeah. Don and Markham, very helpful on the finance side. Eugene and his team on the legal side, I thought were great. Should we give that? Yeah. They were over at Verrill Davis. They were fantastic, and say it slower, Kevin, so normal people can hear.
Yeah, sorry. One thing you'll know about me, I'm a fast talker. Over at Verrill Davis, they were just a fantastic organization to work with, and have helped us throughout the entire process. And I think it is important to have good advisors in both yourself, Todd, someone from Markham on the financial side, and someone on the legal side to make sense of everything. And honestly, and when there is different opinions between you all, just to kind of hear different perspectives, because this is such a life-changing thing that we're all doing. So it's important to have the right team and feel comfortable with that team going into it.
And it's Eugene Ho, H-O. If somebody wants to check him out, you can find him online. This is a page of notes, termination clause, non-compete, non-solicit time period, tail policy on tech liability, basket 1% deductible, liability, regular reps, fundamental reps. All that probably would have been gibberish to you beforehand.
Still is. No, just kidding.
I
Just
think
kidding.
that
No, we learned a lot. We understand the things, and really, it's super. It is so important because I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's a 200-page document that you're going through, and there's a lot of stuff that it's important to understand. And again, this is where having a diverse set of opinions coming through to weigh in on what's material and what's not is critically important.
it's also helpful because what happens is somebody like Eugene gets on with their legal firm. They send over a 80, 90-page document. Eugene reads it all, marks it up. And then the lawyers go through a bunch of legal stuff of why, who, and what's important. And then what bubbles up to you and I, and then Grayson and his team, is these 5 or 8 or 12 business issues that you got to kind of work through. What should your salary be? How much are we really going to get for this? How much has to go in escrow? What, if anything, do you remember from that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of, again, understanding you've got multiple different types of escrows that are happening. You have multiple different calculations that are happening. You have multiple parties, and you're thinking through everything in terms of, one, you want to make sure you're negotiating a deal that is good for both sides because they're your partners. Like you're in this for the long haul. We're not just dumping something. So you want to make sure that your partners feel good about it and that you feel good about it. Your employees got you to where you are, so you've got to make sure you're looking out for employees and understanding how that impacts them. Understand what difference in benefit plans, difference in different terms, different non-competes, everything that's out there. So you're thinking about it from a lot of different lenses, and I think that's, again, probably one of the hardest part is you want it to be good for your employees, you want it to be good for your clients, you want it to be good for yourself, you want it to be good for your new partner, right? And you really want to kind of make sure that all comes together. And then you've got to understand what are all these things, because there are a bunch of new terminology that again, you're just not familiar with. So making sure you've got someone that can really break it down for you and help negotiate and tell you this is where it's worth pushing and this is where there's no point.
I think it's the first time in your life probably that you've had an employment contract. Is that right?
Yeah, probably.
And what was it like negotiating that, worried about that? How do you feel having one? Is it like, do you not think about it anymore? Is it or?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is, again, it's more about the long term and making sure that there's a right path. Like, I let Eugene and team kind of worry about, hey, they're the ones worried about the nitty gritty and making sure that it's fair. But for me, it's like making sure that you've got something that's going to set you up right for the long term, right? And is that's it, because like going through this thing was we're not getting rich off this transaction, we're getting rich off the next transaction, as you said, right? And it's we want to make sure that we've got the right partner and that's going to fit, and we got all the T's crossed and I's dotted as we go through it.
You know, one thing that I know a lot of entrepreneurs worry about, I'd love to hear your comment, is I don't think I'd be a good employee. I don't want to work for somebody else, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day basis, how much has life changed? You've been at this now for 90 days, just about, with your new ownership. What's changed and how dramatic?
I have to get used to Google Hangouts and Teams, but other than that, I mean, in Slack, sorry, we don't have Teams anymore. But no, I mean, I think, it's in terms of the day-to-day, we're still kind of running through. I think there's a lot to integration and making sure like the teams are flowing together and you're aligning to the processes. But I think one thing that we knew as an organization is we wanted to have more process. So rather than creating processes, we're adopting some processes along the way. I think it's honestly, it's a relief to be able to going back to focusing on the things that that I'm good at, right? So it's a relief to be able to say, I'm focusing now more on how do I help clients accelerate their growth versus how do I make sure my, month end is closed and I have the right financials in place, or making sure payroll is done. So it's like, there's benefits of it. And there's, of course, there's as being an owner is a different life. You don't have to ask for approval for anything. You just run and do it. Right. And if it makes sense, it goes through. And I think, the Power have been amazing partners in really just open, transparent dialogue. And I think, again, that goes back to the beginning stages of finding the partner, of someone that's, you can be transparent with it. And that's just really important because, again, you are going to have an employer. Like, it is weird to say after 10 years, I have a boss again, right? But I think being able to have someone that you can be transparent with and go through is key. And again, like, I still think of it as I'm still very much an owner. I want to see it's just in a different organization now, and I want to see it be successful.
Yeah, and you're not punching a time clock, and people just care about your results, not your efforts.
Right.
So due diligence and quality of earnings and all like that. I've got just a couple more questions. Due diligence, quality of earnings and all like that is one thing, but you did a lot, and I've got a different lens on this because we do it more often than you do. You did a lot of meetings to hit the ground running, and Power is more focused on that, I think, than most.
Yeah.
Did that make you feel more or less comfortable going through that amount of meetings, and how would you describe that whole process?
Yeah, no, it is because I think after going through it 2 times, for the second time, I wanted to make sure, one, they understood us, and I wanted to make sure we understood them, right? So I think doing that, and really, I think we even had other suitors that we talked to that pretty much had an LOI for us with maybe 2 conversations. And I'm talking 2 45-minute, conversations that, and it's like, it's great. It's exciting. It's like wonderful. Someone's wants to give us money, and they must really love us. But I think it's more important to, again, find someone who really wants to be a partner, and really flush that out and get it all on the table, because like it's something that, if it's going to be successful in the long run, you got to go through that. So as much as it's a headache to do all these meetings and meet a million different people, and if you're doing it with multiple different organizations, it's a lot of work, and you got to be ready. You really got to make sure you're in a place where you can do it, but it's well worth it, because otherwise, day closes, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I think and again, it's very different of if you're trying to sell it and you're just trying to dump a business and move on, then maybe it doesn't matter as much. But if you're looking to kind of stay and be a part and grow with them, like you do want to make sure they know you and you know them.
And that's also a really good way to get us towards the end of this episode. Because an LOI is great to have. Right? But we have the majority of our leverage before we sign an LOI. And once you sign one, if there's a whole bunch of things they don't know, we're going to figure those things out after LOI,
right?
When they really have all the leverage. So getting an LOI within a meeting or 2 or 3, while it might feel complimentary, is probably anything but that from a buyer standpoint.
It's true. And again, you want to get it all on the table. Because look, due diligence takes a lot of time. It's very expensive for both parties. And, don't put yourself through that if in the end there's going to be something that they may not like. Make sure that, or you may not like, right? But make sure that everybody's got that footing before you go down that path.
Yeah. So, last question would be this. You've been about a quarter into the transaction with Power Digital. I know it's still early. Is there anything in particular that you are most excited about post-close? And any last word of advice? I think you gave it throughout the episode, so I don't know if there's any big aha.
No, I think what I'm most excited is like we're finally getting through that integration and really starting to harness what our joint vision was, and start really being able to accelerate growth for our clients and within the organization. So I think we can already see some great synergies across the partnerships of like things that we just weren't frankly good at, that they're really strong at, and we're able to now offer that to our clients and say, hey, we've got an amazing extension now that we're building out. So it's starting to see that actually, you have the thesis, but starting to see it actually come to fruition is great. And like, we're still early, still a lot of room around there. And again, I think the biggest piece of advice is again, be open, transparent, put it all on the table, and really be prepared before you're getting yourself into. So make sure you're doing the homework, you're organized up front, because all these little things that you can do early on are going to come back to you to later on. So make sure you do it.
That's super helpful. last question, and it will be my last one. What was the reaction from your customers when you told them, your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was what I saw most. What I think we have a really deep, close relationship with a lot of our clients, and I think the most flattering thing was they were like all very excited for us. They're like, "This is great. We're really happy for you. We've seen you grow. Like we've had great client retention, so it's great. We've been with them for several years, so they were happy to see it. And I think too, again, being able to offer the broader set of services of things of instead of being in and bringing in a third party partner and being like, here is our partner, this is all under one shop. I think those two things have been immensely valuable for us.
Excellent. This was a really helpful episode, Kevin. Thank you for that. Also, to shout out to both Don and Eugene, your finance and legal. But it takes a lot of people to get a deal done. Grayson and Joy were terrific. And as you know, they're supported by the people at Court Square, the Brian and Matt and the team at Court Square. They were terrific. So a job well done by all parties results in a great transaction. It'll be super exciting to see how well you and the Power team continue to grow this business, which will be fun to watch over the years. And I appreciate you sharing some of your insights on this.
For sure. Thanks so much, Todd. No, it was great. Definitely all across the teams were great and really, a challenging thing to kind of go through first time, but it was great.
Thanks, Kevin. Best of luck going forward. And you can find Kevin on LinkedIn. All the notes will be in the show notes if you go to secondbitepodcast.com. Thanks to our friends at Markham. Congratulations to the folks at Power Digital. They got a great asset in Sproutward. And Kevin, thanks again for joining.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.